Alright guys, welcome back to Legends of Evil, where I spotlight villains from movies, TV, video games, everything, pretty much every villain outside comic books, more or less, to, broaden the villain horizon. So, today I'm going to go back to the Star Wars universe and talk about someone who, probably a character who has had a rise and fall. Well, I have a love-hate relationship with this character, and that character in question is General Grievous. Now, the story of Grievous is an interesting one, because it's not really a story that most people seem to remember. It's kind of like almost like a secret origin in some cases. Now, Grievous is not a droid. Let's get that out of the way. As he's always said, he is not a droid. He may be a general of the droid army, but that does not make him a droid himself. He's in reality a cyborg. Although, granted, it's kind of like the RoboCop situation, where only a few things were spared. Think of it, yeah, Grievous is kind of like the dark RoboCop, more or less. But yeah, Grievous is actually from a planet called Kali. He is known as the Kalis, and he was a general who was more or less leading rebellion with his people of Kali against a race of technologically advanced mantis-like creatures called the Huck, who were enslaving and experimenting and, in some cases, consuming the Kalish. So Grievous, as he was known, he had a different name. His name was Quadam As Salim. I think that was his name. So he basically fought them throughout the long, but after a long campaign, he was eventually, mentally worn down. Grievous was kind of pretty much mentally and physically exhausted, and with his battle with the Huck, and he more or less was feeling that, every time there was a victory for the Kali, he would lose so many friends and comrades, and even lover. He even lost his first wife during the wars, and a majority of his children. He did have children at one point, but the Huck slaughtered them all. So he eventually changed his name to become known as Grievous, because he would bring that kind of grieving he would have in himself and bring it down on his enemies. Eventually, under Grievous's command, the Kalish were about to win their battle against the Huck. But then the Huck decided to go to Coruscant to pledge this, to make a plea to the Republic and beg them for help, saying that the Huck were on a peacekeeping mission and the Kali were slaughtering them. This in turn made Grievous begin his long and undying hatred for the Kali, for both, the Jedi and the Republic in question, because the Republic came down with Republic soldiers and Jedi, defeated the Kali, and more or less broke the army in two. One day when Grievous was attempting to make leave on his ship, go on a patrol, the ship malfunctioned and crash-landed, badly injuring him and killing everyone else on board. However, what he didn't know was that the ship was sabotaged by Count Dooku, who was working with Sidious, and to make him into the droid general we all know him to be. Grievous was then, his body was taken to the to the banking clan, who more or less retrofitted his body into what you see now, into this mechanical monstrosity. Grievous at first hated being in charge of the droid army. When he was on Geonosis, he more or less got a look at what the droids were. Even with the super battle droids, he despised these just mindless automatons that he would be forced to work with. And so this is where he came in with the idea of the Magna Guard, his personal warriors with the electro staffs. While Newt Gunray and the others bitched and moaned that, oh, it's too expensive, Dooku said, yeah, I like it, let's build it. So thus we had the Magna Guards. Also, Grievous was there on Geonosis, but Dooku told him, you're not going to reveal yourself until the time is right. So Grievous watched, and also, during that time, he also trained with Count Dooku in the ways of the multiple forms of lightsaber training, the multiple lightsaber styles. While he was on Geonosis observing the Jedi during their battle in the Geonosis Coliseum, he watched all the Jedi that were there who were not only killed, that gave him a lot of pleasure, but also that also gave him a sense of what Jedi used what forms from which Jedi he had seen. He also witnessed one Jedi in particular that got him the most interested. That Jedi's name was Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yeah, out of all the Jedi, he observed Obi-Wan interested him the most out of all of them, because he saw just this wild form and this kind of like great warrior that he kind of relished the idea of, out of all the Jedi he would face, Obi-Wan would be the one that he wanted to fight the most. So, 4 months into the war, Grievous still was supposed to fight in the shadows, and he was still training under Dooku, and even sometimes with Ventress and Dirge, until eventually he was allowed to be seen. Now, here's where my love-hate relationship comes in. If you guys remember in the original Clone Wars miniseries by Gennady Tartakovsky, Grievous in there was completely badass. The dude came off like a predator to the Jedi. The Jedi were terrified of him. And, God almighty, seeing those lightsaber battles, we could see all that kind of rage and just kind of cautious, that kind of just monstrous style to him. Grievous in that series was like a slasher in a horror film to the Jedi. It almost comes off like Jason is coming to kill them, more or less. That's what it kind of feels like. But yeah, with that Grievous, he also had the John DiMaggio. For those that know, John DiMaggio did the voice of Grievous for a little while. I think another voice actor did it in the second part of Tarkovsky's series. But yeah, Grievous had this very cold, metallic voice, and also he put all of his training. He was just a monster, more or less. And then I was like, oh, he's so cool. As a kid, I was like, God damn, Grievous is awesome. But yeah. With that being said, Grievous in the Tarkovsky series, I think a lot of us were like, yeah, General Grievous! He's awesome! He's this monster! And, the Jedi are terrified of him. And they had the right reason to be so. Now, among other things, let's talk about let's talk about Revenge of the Sith. When we saw him in Revenge of the Sith, we didn't see what we wanted to see with Grievous in Tarkovsky's series. What we saw was this haggard and they gave a good explanation for it, that Windu crushed his chest. But even then, in Revenge of the Sith, he kind of came off like a chump in his battle with Obi-Wan. Yeah. And then we have Clone Wars, where we don't see this, like, deadly, conniving, just this monster this nightmare coming to kill the Jedi. We don't see that at all in the Clone Wars animated series, the CGI one. We see this coward, and he just breaks out the 4 lightsabers whenever he can. He just runs away from battles, and he gets wounded more often than not. At other times, he barely got wounded in the Tarkovsky series. So yeah, he just kept coughing and hacking all the time. He's just like, ugh. So I was kind of, I was kind of like, man, I just don't care for Grievous anymore. I'll just stick with the Tarkovsky series of Grievous. And also the Dark Horse Comics version of Grievous, who really expanded his character. But I like Clone Wars. There are some changes in there that I liked, and there were others that I didn't. The stuff they did with Grievous was not one of them. Ventress, on the other hand, is completely awesome in there. But Grievous, yeah, Grievous is one of my. I don't know if I ever do like top whatever Star Wars characters, he'd probably be in somewhere in the 20s. But, if you'd ask me, like, my younger self, I'd have been like, oh, yeah, Grievous is, like, top 10, right off the bat. But, yeah. Now, other things about Grievous himself is that, he and Obi-Wan kind of had this interesting rivalry, because Grievous, in his private moments, Grievous believed that Obi-Wan was, destined to, he was destined to fight Obi-Wan in either a life or death battle, because really, he believed that the gods were punishing him he believed that the gods that he believed in Kalish were punishing him for becoming this metal monstrosity. So, and when he saw, Obi-Wan and challenged him during the Clone Wars, he always felt like, he was the one unstoppable object that he just could not defeat in a head-on battle. So that was the thing with Grievous, is that he always, he believed that, either Obi-Wan's going to kill him, or he's going to kill Obi-Wan and earn his favor with the gods once more. So, Grievous, in some cases, very dangerous, this great general. In other cases, he's an idiot with a breathing problem. So, again, he's a great, in some cases he's a great character, and I don't, I'm not saying that Disney ruined him, because you gotta understand that Clone Wars was bought before Disney was Clone Wars was made before, Disney made the buyout, so I can't really blame the stuff they did with Disney. I just think it was just some changes that they, really, I was like, God, why'd you, Revenge of the Sith version of Grievous, God, it sucks. And then they kind of followed it suit with this character who could have, like, in the Tarkovsky series, could have been like a nightmare for the Jedi. But, nope, they just make him this coward who, you can barely understand. And I don't hate Grievous's voice, but they really distorted it in Clone Wars. They really made it so, like, hard to understand in some cases. But yeah. Anyway, so you guys tell me, what do you guys think of General Grievous? Do you like him? Do you hate him? Yeah, once again, hope you all enjoyed this segment of Legends of Evil. And yeah, once again, I will see you guys later.